Welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, one of our special guests is State Senator John Rafferty. He is the Republican candidate for Attorney General. Patti also joins me. But first, a post-election preview with two of the state's leading reporters. We'll be back after these words.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Well, welcome back to the program. Let's get right to it. John Micek, he's the editorial page editor from the Harrisburg Patriot News and PennLive. He gets out and covers campaigns. He is still a reporter. And who else? Karen Langley with the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. She was following, who was that woman you were following around? Hillary Clinton. Yeah, Hillary Clinton. All right, let's get to it. John, let me start with you. No big surprise that Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump carried the state. But the size of the victories, I think, shocked almost anyone. They certainly shocked us pollsters. We had the right winners, but they greatly overperformed.
It was a walk-off for Trump. He carried all 67 counties, a pretty extraordinary win. Secretary Clinton won 56-44, somewhere around there, a big win over Senator Bernie Sanders. Again, benefiting from the fact that this is a closed primary in Pennsylvania and only registered Democrats could come out. And it was friendly territory for her. Pennsylvania has always been Clinton country.
Yeah, that's right. And you know what was sort of surprising was, as John points out, not just the depth, but the breadth of the victory. Now, you were covering Secretary Clinton. Was there anything that you caught in your interviews and you spent a lot of time with folks who were actually, at these rallies. They said there wasn't a lot of enthusiasm overall, but it didn't seem like. Describe a Clinton rally. You were there.
Well, certainly the people who turned out to Secretary Clinton's election night event were very enthusiastic about her. They were watching on a big screen as the TV networks showed from time to time their rally, and a big cheer would go up with the signs waving whenever they came on TV. They didn't have to wait very long to hear their good news on Tuesday night.
Here's what I thought she did that was pretty effective. Because of her deep roots here, and she has them. Her father and grandfather, Scranton born, and her father played football for Penn State. Every place she went, she would localize it. She would talk about people she knew and folks and events that she had been to, right?
She has, as you say, ties to Pennsylvania, and we can't forget, did very well here in the last competitive Pennsylvania primary, where she beat now President Obama easily.
Yeah, Terry, one of the things we saw her doing throughout the primary campaign, say in the Michigan primary, for instance, she would find a local issue to latch onto. So that was, in that case, it was the Flint, Michigan water problems. In Pennsylvania, it was talking about steel in Scranton or steel in Pittsburgh or tech growth in Philadelphia. Very clever to localize the appeal that way, and that made it feel as if she was locked into issues here.
And gangs and drugs, and particularly in the African American community, right? Go ahead.
That's exactly right. In recent days, she was speaking to people who had been involved in that issue and about those issues at election night. She talked about victims of gun violence and encounters with the police, and was certainly tapping into some of the national discussion about those issues.
Both Clinton and Sanders did MSNBC town halls at the National Constitution Center on Monday night, election eve, and Clinton became her most animated and got her loudest applause from this hometown crowd when she started talking about gun violence and urging people who were concerned about gun violence to go out and vote against NRA-supported candidates. It's something she really locked onto in Philadelphia, and I think quite effectively, because she'd gotten so much pushback about Bill Clinton's remarks about the 1994 crime bill. It's something they had to address specifically.
And I thought that overall, the range of demographics, Pennsylvania is the fourth oldest state in the Union, first oldest population, I should say. We're not the first oldest state in the Union. I'll get in trouble if I say that, as all the Pennsylvania historians will call me. But the other point is, she also did well with minorities, with, as I said, with seniors, with folks with college educations. She just sort of ran the gamut. It seemed to me that this was just much more familiar turf for her than Bernie Sanders. Would you agree?
I think that that's right. There was a sign in the crowd at her election night event saying Clinton country, and I think certainly some observers would describe Pennsylvania that way.
Yeah, I joke, John, and say her father played football for Penn State. Maybe that's enough to win you anything in our state, right?
It certainly doesn't hurt. I mean, she started on third base on this one. But if you want to talk about demographics, Terry, we can leap across to the other side of the ticket, where Donald Trump cut across all sorts of different demographics. There was CNN exit polling showing that he was doing well with evangelicals, people with college degrees. I mean, you think of that traditional Trump base, sort of lower educated, white, working class males, but he outperformed in across demographics on Tuesday night.
Yeah, especially down in the Philadelphia suburbs, where most of us expected John Kasich to do well.
Exactly.
It was, Kasich did fairly well there, but Trump won, as you point out, college educated voters. He won people who at higher income levels.
Exactly.
I didn't see much I guess it was the range and the scope and the magnitude of that victory. Agreed?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was striking. It was a very large victory, and I don't know if we want to talk about the delegates, but of course am I anticipating you?
No. But let's try. Believe me, we're going to go to a break, and then we're going to get into these delegate situations. These delegates could really matter. I mean, if Trump falls short of the magic 1237 to 54 delegates from Pennsylvania,
absolutely.
We'll get into all of that. Stay with us. We'll do that after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, now celebrating 100 years as the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania State Education Association and Partners for Public Education, bringing the power of a great education to our schools, our students, and our communities. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Please visit pahighwayinfo.org. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
John Micek and Karen Langley join me. They're reporters who were covering the presidential and other campaigns. And coming up, John Rafferty. He is the Republican candidate for Attorney General, and Dave Patti, he heads Pennsylvania Business Council. All right, we all have had to explain this. I don't even know how to describe this delegate situation in Pennsylvania except to say it's unique, and I'm being kind. All right, Karen, explain it. 71 delegates all told go to the Republican convention. 17 go with the winner. We know 17 go to Trump. What about these other 54?
So there's 54 unbound delegates from Pennsildania, 3 from each of the congressional districts, who don't have any obligation to support any particular candidate at the Republican convention. But the campaigns and journalists have done their work contacting these people and gotten a
all
sense
162 of them
of who they say they would support, or the congressional district winner. And so it seems like when the dust has settled that Trump has a large number of these unbound delegates voting for him either because they support him directly or because they support the winner of their congressional district who was Trump. And so it seems like there are different numbers floating around out there, but many of the numbers are somewhere in the 30s, perhaps, of the 54.
Go ahead. No, I think that's a reasonable estimate, somewhere 31, 33. I think I heard one report at 41. But he definitely has the lion's share of them, right, John?
Yeah, he does. I mean, it's also important to add that these delegates are only bound through one ballot at the convention. So if things get hairy in Cleveland come July, you might see
the 17 unbound ones. The 54 are unbound.
They're unbound no matter what. And so
so
things could get really crazy if things get hairy in Cleveland in July.
Well, hold on. Here's my question to you. 1237.
Yes.
Trump, if he doesn't do well in Indiana, 57 delegates. The mathematical estimates, I love this, say he's going to be short. What is going to happen when you're at the convention and I'm there and we're covering it to those 54?
Well, I mean, we've seen some of that already, Terry. I mean, the campaigns were releasing lists of delegates to people who are publicly committed to them, urging people to vote for them on the ballot on Tuesday. We know that there was a heavy courtship for these delegates coming into the election on Tuesday. And because they're not public officials, I mean, you could theoretically, Trump could fly them to Atlantic City and wine them and dine them to keep them on side.
Yeah, I mean, what I don't get is this system, they tell me, goes way back to the beginning of, who knows, 1856. Abraham Lincoln was elected requiring a majority. Your folks at your paper have actually talked to some of these people, right? Do you think most of them are going to do what they say? I mean, just given the interviews that you all have done with them, they're going to stay with Trump if they said they're with Trump? I
mean, I can't say about any given delegate. I think certainly, the more that someone says publicly that they're going to do a thing, the harder that it becomes for them to go back on that. But as we've been saying, I think there will be a great lot of pressure in Cleveland that these people will be facing. And so I think it's hard to say for certain what is going to happen there.
All right,
one of the great public services of this process, we should add, is that it's shown a fairly bright light on this very archaic delegate system. And now, the average voter probably knows more about it than they probably wanted to know.
Than he or she ever wanted to know. All right, U.S. Senate race. Katie McGinty ended up beating Joe Sestak. John Fetterman was third in the race. We've covered this. You all have written about it and covered it. The big surprise to me was the size of the victory, not that she won because of this great surge. Give me the 2 or 3 reasons why she surged.
Geysers and geysers and geysers of establishment cash. You had President Obama, Vice President Biden getting behind her, Governor Tom Wolf, former Governor Ed Rendell, Emily's List, Big Labor. I mean, the list goes on and on and on, all with endorsements, all channeling money to Katie McGinty. I mean, keep in mind, Terry, that she entered the race comparably late in response to what was the Democratic equivalent of #NeverSestak. And she got in, everyone lined behind her, and come Tuesday night, there she was.
Yeah, I mean, the fact is that Sestak was, I won't call him the anti-establishment. He was the maverick out on his own, not part, of the Democratic, internal Democratic operations. Take that away.
Well, and this is a seat that the Democrats really want to take from Senator Toomey. We're talking about potentially control of the Senate, and so this is a seat like anyone that's potentially up for grabs, that they don't want someone who they potentially see going their own way, competing for.
Right. All right, we have about 30 seconds. Do you expect this to be pretty competitive?
The Senate race?
Yeah.
Oh, God, absolutely.
And it's going to be one of the marquee races in the country, right?
One of the top 5 U.S. Senate races in the country.
It's a full employment bill for both of you. You're going to be covering that like wild. All right, when we come back, John Rafferty, he's a state senator, but he's also the Republican nominee for Attorney General, and Patti, they join me, and we'll get into the Attorney General's race. And who knows, I might even ask a question about the state budget. You all don't say anything. I'll be back in a minute.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania, and by the Pennsylvania Coal Alliance, representing companies involved in America's most affordable, reliable energy source. To learn more, visit betterwithcoal.com.
Well, welcome back. Well, Patti joins me, as often is the case. He's the president and CEO of the Pennsylvania Business Council, and we have John Rafferty. He's a state senator. But for this period of the interview, Senator, we're going to talk about your new role as the Republican candidate for Attorney General. First of all, congratulations on your victory.
Thank you, Terry.
All right. I guess if you've been asked this once, you've been asked it 100 times. So let's do 101. Why are you running? Let's start with that.
Sure. Terry, I've been first of all, I spent time in the Office of Attorney General many years ago in the Medicaid fraud section. Really have a affinity for that office and the work that's done in that office. Really great professional staff, and worked very closely with that office as a state senator, as I have the DA's Association and the law enforcement community. And when things began to unravel as quickly as they have been in that office, and really started to tarnish the reputation of that office and the work being slowed down because of all the personal intrigue and political intrigue, I said, that's it. I'm going to run for Attorney General, bring back the professional responsibility, bring back the integrity in that office, and be a true leader to redirect that office and bring it back to where it's working for the people of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I know. Unsaid was Kathleen Kane. Now, we're not going to get into all of that because I think what's relevant is moving forward, and we've done at least, how many shows, Dave? About 100 with you, I think, just on that subject.
Kathleen Kane has dominated the last 3 years of news cycles in Pennsylvania.
So one further question. All right, if there's 2 or 3 sort of central issues that you want to focus on, sort of outside of the question of the reform of the office, what would they be?
Certainly, on the criminal side, we're going to go full tilt after the heroin epidemic here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. We've already started in the legislature to address this. Gene Yaw's done some terrific work on it. We've done some prescription abuse legislation already. We've been talking with doctors. I've spent time with pain doctors. We're trying to crack down on these doctors, and I don't mean the ones I spoke with. We're trying to crack down on these doctors who are just free writing scripts for people. And we're stopping the pharmacy shopping as well, and working with the law enforcement community. And Terry, doing something that hasn't been done in that office in a while now, partnering with the DAs. Partnering with the DAs throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania who have a real feel for their counties and where those issues are, to bring our resources to bear to make sure that we can go after the suppliers. And part of that as well is the legislation I authored that made gang recruitment and gang retention criminal matters here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, because we know the criminal gangs are helping to move the heroin product here in the Commonwealth.
Well, we hear a lot about this office, but we don't often talk about its importance.
Well, and it's broader than the law enforcement, and I don't want to denigrate the law enforcement. That's quite important. But the Office of Attorney General gets involved in consumer issues, in environmental issues, and in tax issues. And frankly, some attorneys general, this will be a shock to you, but a lot of them have used it as a way to launch a political career to other things.
Oh, you mean run for governor?
Perhaps, and have used it as opportunities to frankly just pick an enemy and go after them. You know, you think of Elliot Spitzer in New York, but I will tell you that the senator's opponent, Mr. Shapiro, the other night in his acceptance speech said, well, and we're going to go after the frackers. Well, have they done anything wrong? I mean, Josh, you know, there's a process here, and picking out parts of the business community or some industry and just saying we're going to go after them because I get headlines out of it is a problem. So the business community cares about this office. All
right, let's run to a break. When we come back, we're going to continue this discussion. I'm going to leave some extra time so we can get into more details, and we'll do that back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Medical Society. Inspired physicians committed to the good health of Pennsylvanians and the advancement of the practice of medicine. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, advancing quality, improving lives. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Business Council and by the Pennsylvania Business Council Education Foundation.
Welcome back to the program. I'm talking with Dave Patti. He heads the Pennsylvania Business Council and the Republican candidate for Attorney General of Pennsylvania, John Rafferty. I almost said of the United States. We're not quite there yet. You get appointed to that anyway, Senator. All right, you brought up this aspiring to a higher office, as we know, 3 at least, Ernie Preate, not 3 altogether, Ernie Preate, Mike Fisher, and Tom Corbett, all ran for governor. Have you taken the pledge? Can I put it that way,
Absolutely,
Senator?
Terry. In fact, I challenged my opponent to do the same. On day one, when I announced my candidacy for Attorney General, I said, if elected, I serve 4 years. If re-elected, I serve 4 years. I'm taking the politics out of that office, the personal vendetta, the political pollsters. I'm running to be the Attorney General for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania with my unique background, criminal law experience, civil law experience, very extensive, 13 years as a senator, and even prior to all that, 10 years as a small businessman here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Nobody else running for this seat has those qualifications and could bring that management experience to the Office of Attorney General.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's this big debate about whether you have to be sort of a district attorney, and that's where many of them have come from, you know, district attorney at the county level and then moving on. Big debate, prosecutorial experience or management experience. What's your sense of that?
Well, I mean,
I know we're into the weeds here.
Calling the office the top cop, you know, makes for a nice little shorthand in the newspapers or on radio and television, but it does a disservice because, so frankly, I don't know. I think most attorneys general would tell you 20%, 30% of the work is really law enforcement, and it's critically important law enforcement. Don't get me wrong. But 60, 70, 80% of the work is other types of work. And that work in environmental, in law, in consumer protection, in managing nonprofits, all very, very critical to the life of the Commonwealth, the quality of life in the Commonwealth, but also, from my point of view anyway, from the economic life and the prosperity of the Commonwealth and the business community's ability to have a stable, predictable, fair basis.
You know, one of the things that sort of troubled me as an observer is, now look, if somebody does something wrong in any department or any bureau of state government, then weed them out, get rid of them, and do the right thing. But you have about 830 people that work in the Attorney General's office who have had nothing to do with sort of this, and I'll put it this way, you know, what's going on at the top with Kathleen Kane, all the controversy, civil lawsuits by people in the Attorney General's office against the Attorney General. Outside of the office, civil lawsuits, and I didn't even get into the 12 legal counts, you know, criminal counts that she faces, 2 of which are felonies. Isn't that important to get that structural and the management situation straightened out there so those folks can have a sense when they go into the office that what they're doing is being supported?
Absolutely right. It's critical, Terry, and with my experience and with the Attorney General itself, you're the CEO of that corporation. You have to set the policy, you have to set the morale, you have to let the staff know that you're going to work with them and have their backs as long as they follow the procedures of that office. And it hasn't been done. There's been personal vendettas, there's been political decisions over there, hence my saying, I'm not running for governor as attorney. I'm strictly Attorney General. And I'm going to bring to that office that sense of loyalty and professional responsibility that has always been exhibited in the past. And we have to make sure that we end these personal vendettas over there and end this type of disruption. You have to focus the Attorney General on what it's supposed to do. Be the chief law enforcement officer and the chief attorney for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Okay,
Dave, we have about 45, 50 seconds left. I got to ask you this question. Were you shocked at the turnout?
Yeah, Republicans turned out at 50%, Democrats at 40%. So it really showed that, frankly, I don't know of any other way to get there than to say Donald Trump brought people to the polls. But they also voted for the other Republican and the establishment mainstream Republican candidates downstream. So, frankly, Donald Trump may not be a bad thing for the Republican Party.
Yeah, you agree with that?
I do. I think that there's this movement behind Donald Trump that we all need to recognize and capitalize on. And this establishment, no, everybody's a Republican or a Democrat. That's it.
All right. Hey, thanks for coming on. Best to you.
Thank you, Terry.
All right. We'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And as always, stay well.